Hello and welcome to my channel. Today is February the 2nd, 2021. We're in the second day of Black History Month, and I figured it'd be potent to go over the Underground Railroad. My source is going to be history.com. Topics: Black History, Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad was a network of people, African American as well as white, offering shelter to aid the escaped enslaved people from the South. It developed as a convergence of several different clandestine efforts. The exact dates of the existence are not known, but it operated from the late 18th century to the Civil War, at which point its efforts continued to undermine the Confederacy and a less secretive faction. Now, my understanding is the Underground Railroad actually went up to Canada, if I'm not mistaken. So, of course, we got the Quaker abolitionists. The Quakers are considered the first organized group to actively help escape enslaved people. Even the first President George Washington complained in 1786 that the Quakers had attempted to liberate one of his enslaved workers. In the early 1800s, the Quaker abolitionists Isaac T. Hopper set up a network in Philadelphia that helped enslaved people on the run. At the same time, Quakers in North Carolina established abolitionist groups that laid the groundwork for routes and shelters for escapees. The African Methodist Episcopal Church, established in 1816, was another proactive religious group help fugitives enslaved people or helping fugitive enslaved people. Yeah, I guess I can't read today. What was the Underground Railroad? The earliest mention of the Underground Railroad came in 1831 when an enslaved man, Tice David, escaped from Kentucky into Ohio, and his owner blamed an underground railroad helping David's to freedom. In 1839, a Washington newspaper reported an escaped enslaved man named Jim had revealed, under torture, his plan to go north following the Underground Railroad to Boston. Vigilance committees created to protect enslaved or escaped enslaved people from bounty hunters in New York in 1935 and Philadelphia in 1838. I hope I said that right. In 1835 and Philadelphia in 1838 soon expanded their activities to guide enslaved people on the run. By the 1840s, the term Underground Railroad was part of the American Pinnacle. How the underground worked. I guess that's an image that I can't see, but doesn't really matter. Most of the enslaved people helped by the Underground Railroad escaped borders such as Kentucky, Virginia, and Maryland. In the Deep South, the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793 made capturing escaped enslaved people a lucrative business, and there were fewer hiding places for them. Fugitive enslaved people were typically on their own until they got to certain points farther north. People known as conductors guided the fugitive enslaved people hiding places including private homes, churches, and schoolhouses. These were called stations, safe houses, and depots. The people operating them were also called station masters. There were many used routes stretching west through Ohio to Indiana and Iowa. Others headed north through Pennsylvania and into New England or through Detroit on their way to Canada. See, I was right, it did go up to Canada. Fugitive Slave Acts. The reason many escapes headed for Canada was that the Fugitive Slave Acts, first passed in 1793 allowed local governments to upper hand and extract escaped enslaved people from within the borders of free states back to the point of their origin and punish anyone helping the fugitives. Some northern states tried to combat this with the personal liberty laws, which were struck down by the Supreme Court in 1842. The Fugitive Act of 1850 was designed to straighten the previous law, which was felt by southern states to be inadequate enforcement. This update created harsher penalties and set up a system of commissioners that promoted favoritism towards the owners of enslaved people and led some formerly enslaved people being recaptured. For an escaped person, the northern states were still considered a risk. Meanwhile, Canada offered black people the freedom to live where they wanted, sit on juries, run for public office, and more, and efforts to extract them had largely failed. Some Underground Railroad operators based themselves in Canada and worked to help arriving fugitives settle in. Harriet Tubman was the most famous conductor of the Underground Railroad. Born an enslaved woman named Arminta Ross, she took the name Harriet Truman was her married name when in 1849 she escaped a plantation in Maryland with two of her brothers. They returned a couple of weeks later, but Truman left again on her own shortly after, making her way to Pennsylvania. Truman later returned to the plantation on several occasions to rescue family members and others. On her third trip, she tried to rescue her husband, but he had remarried and refused to leave. Man, talking about a cheating hoe. How dare he get remarried? Distraught, Tubman reported a vision of God, at which she joined the Underground Railroad and began guiding other escaped slaves to Maryland. Tubman regularly took groups of escapees to Canada, distressing the United States to treat them well. Frederick Douglass, formerly enslaved person and famed writer of Frederick Douglass, hid fugitives in his home in Rochester, New York, helping 400 escapees make their way to Canada. The former fugitive, Reverend Jermaine Woogan, who lived in the neighboring Syracuse, helped 1,500 escapees go north. Robert Purvis, an escaped enslaved person turned Philadelphia merchant, formed the Vigilance Committee there in 1838. Former enslaved person and railroad operator Joshua Henson created the Don Institution in 1842 in Ontario to help escapees who made their way to Canada learn needed work skills. A New York-based escapee, Louis Napoleon, occupation as listed on his death certificate was Underground RR agent and was a key figure guiding fugitives he found at the docks and train stations. John Parker was a free black man in Ohio, boundary owner who took a rowboat across the Ohio River to help fugitives cross. He was known to make his way into Kentucky and enter plantations to help enslaved people escape. William Still was a prominent Philadelphia citizen who had been born to fugitive enslaved parents in New Jersey. An associate of Tubman, still also kept a record of his activity in an underground railroad and was able to keep it safely hidden until after the Civil War when he published them, offering one of his clearest accounts of the railroad activity at the time. Who ran the Underground Railroad? Most of the Underground Railroad operators were ordinary people, farmers, and business owners, as well as ministers. Some of the wealthy people were involved, such as Garrett Smith, a millionaire who twice ran for president. In 1841, Smith purchased an entire family of enslaved people from Kentucky and set them free. One of the earliest known people to help fugitives and enslaved people was Louis Coffin, a Quaker from North Carolina. He started around 1813 when he was 15 years old. Coffin said that he learned their hiding places and sought them out to help them moving along. Eventually, they began to find their way to him. Coffin later moved to Indiana and then Ohio and continued to help escaped enslaved people where he lived. John Brown, abolitionist John Brown, was conductor of the Underground Railroad, during which time he established the lead of Gileadites devoted to helping fugitive enslaved people get to Canada. Brown would play many roles in the abolishment movement, most famous leading to the raid of Harper Ferry to create an armed force to make it into the deep South and free enslaved people by gunpoint. Brown's men were defeated and Brown hung for treason in 1859. Yikes. A little insurrection right there. By 1837, Reverend Calvin Fairbank was helping enslaved people escape from Kentucky to Ohio. In 1844, he partnered with Vermont schoolteacher Delia Webster and was arrested for helping an escaped enslaved woman and her child. He was pardoned in 1849 but was arrested again and spent another 12 years in jail. Charles Torrey was sent to prison for 6 years in Maryland for helping an enslaved family escape through Virginia. He operated out of the Washington, D.C., and had previously worked as a abolitionist newspaper editor in Albany, New York. Massachusetts Sea Captain Jonathan Walker was arrested in 1844 after he was caught with a boatload of escaped enslaved people that he was trying to help get north. Walker was fined and jailed for a year, and branded on his right hand were the letters SS for slave stealer. Ouch. A little extreme, marking people. John Fairfield of Virginia redirected his slave-holding family to help rescue the left-behind families of enslaved people who made it north. Fairfield's method was to travel in the South posing as a slave trader. He broke out of jail twice and died in 1860 in the Tennessee during a rebellion. The end of the line. The Underground Railroad ceased operation in about 1863 during the Civil War. In reality, it moved above ground as part of the Union effort against the Confederacy. Harry Trumpet once played a significant part by leading intelligence operation and fulfilling a command role in the Union Army operation to rescue the emancipated enslaved people. And of course, that's just the sources. Bound for Calais, Epic Story of the Underground Railroad. Yeah, so pretty interesting, kind of dark on the things that happened. Hopefully, you found this somewhat educational. Leave a comment down below. Let me know if you want me to continue. But more importantly, have yourself a wonderful day, morning, or evening, and hit that smash or hit that smash. Oh, yeah, smash the like button or the subscribe button or hit the plus button on Rumble.